It's Fort Wayne Community School Board of Trustees meeting. We will start tonight's meeting as we do every meeting, although there was some talk of changing precedent, but I haven't prepared for that, so we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Steve, would you like to begin the roll call?
Good evening. My name is Steve Corona, and I represent the folks from the 5th District.
Good evening. I'm Glenna Yale from the 2nd District.
And I'm Becky Hill from the 3rd District.
I am Ann Duff. I represent the district at large.
I'm Jordan Lebemoff, the 4th District.
And I'm Julie Hollingsworth, and I was elected from the 1st District. And Mr. Giaquina is not with us tonight. To my far left is Barb Trout, the clerk of the board, who tries to keep all of us organized. I like herding cats, but you do a fine job. And next to her, our superintendent, Dr. Robinson. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
That's wonderful.
We have some awards and recognitions tonight. The first is a pretty exclusive club, and those are National Merit and National Achievement honorees. It's recommended that the board recognize students who were named semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Competition. Each year, the College Entrance Examination Board recognizes exceptional students from the more than 1 million students who take the preliminary SAT, which is also the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, in their junior year. Students were also selected based on academic performance. 3 Fort Wayne Community School students were named National Merit semifinalists. They are among the approximately 16,000 students competing for 7,500 scholarships. Please come forward so your name is read and stay up here at the front so pictures may be taken. From Northrop High School, Benjamin Yos. Did I pronounce that correctly? Benjamin Yos. And Alexander Espinoza. And accepting on his behalf is Northrop Principal Jason Witzegruder. From Northside High School, Audrey Scantlin. And accepting on her behalf is David West, Principal. And as often happens, these outstanding students are often, in other activities or maybe working. So close in there and we'll take a picture. Congratulations. Our next award is to the All-State Vocal Jazz Ensemble. Grab that. It's recommended that the board recognize the Snyder High School students who were named to the All-State Vocal Jazz Ensemble. 2 Snyder High School choir students auditioned and were selected to the 2016 Indiana All-State Vocal Jazz Ensemble. Senior Minda Hartman and 2016 Snyder graduate Jacob Berger were among 32 students selected statewide for this honor choir. The Indiana All-State Vocal Jazz Ensemble performed on June 28th at the University of Indianapolis during the Indiana Choral Directors Summer Conference. And so, congratulations to Minda Hartman and Jacob Berger from Snyder High School. And is their choral director, Margaret Buttermore, present? Come on down. And Snyder principal, Nicole Chisley. Close in for pictures. So Jacob, just out of curiosity, are you, so you're a graduate? Yeah. And are you pursuing, there's a microphone right there. Are you pursuing choir somewhere? Your vocal interest leads you perhaps to?
Just my car for the most part.
Okay. So we're going to see you on Carpool Karaoke?
Maybe someday.
Yeah? And you are in college where?
Ivy Tech for culinary.
Okay, okay, very good, multi-talented. Okay, very good, very good. Minda, how about you? Do you have a career or a post-secondary decision made yet, or?
I haven't made a decision on a college yet, but I'm looking at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay. That's close to the music industry.
Yes, yes. ISU, Indiana State and Terre Haute.
Okay,
And then Butler University, which is where my parents went to. So,
okay, very good. Well, good luck with
Thank you.
your decision.
thank you.
Next, we have the consent agenda, and those are items that come to us every meeting. Board members are free to take one of those out of the consent agenda if they wish. That includes the approval of the minutes from the meeting that we held 2 weeks ago on October 10th, vouchers and payroll, the vouchers for the period ending October 24th and payroll for the period ending September 30th are included in this agenda. And those vouchers, by the way, are kept on file for 7 years for any of the member of the public so inclined to slog through them. And the personnel report. Dr. Robinson, was there anything in the personnel report you
Nothing
wanted to
tonight.
highlight or mention? Okay.
Not tonight, thank you.
So, seeing no mention of any of those items that any of us want to take out, do we have a,
I'd move approval
Move
of the consent agenda items, Madam
Second.
Chair.
okay, thanks, Steve, thanks, Becky. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. We have consented. So now we move to the new business. And that starts with the recommendation for an award for a bus lift at the North Transportation Center. It's recommended that an award be made to the USA Lift, Inc. for meeting specifications and quality standards for a bus lift at the North Transportation Center. USA Lift is located in Bloomington, Indiana, and the cost of that is $142,933.41. The board approved a bid in May of this year to replace 4 bus lifts at the North and South Transportation Centers. The vendor has agreed to extend the pricing for a 5th and final lift. Funding for these purchases will be from the Transportation Fund. And Frank Jackson, Director of Transportation, is available to answer any questions. Hello, Frank. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, Becky.
Is a bus?
Any questions?
Yes, is a bus lift. My first impression was like to lift wheelchairs out of the bus, but now we're lifting the actual bus.
Yeah, we're lifting the bus this time, although we got lots of lift with students as well.
All right, got that clear now.
That was my initial question in May, too, right. Any other questions? Okay.
To work on it.
So we have a motion and a second, so all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we get to buy a lift. And next is the Teacher Incentive Fund Grant. And Becky, you want to do that one?
Will do. It is recommended that the board approve the acceptance of our continuation award from the U.S. Department of Education for the Teacher Initiative Fund, the TIF grant, in the amount of $8,900,000. This award, a little over that, this award is for the fifth and final grant year, which continues through September 30th, 2017. Related information is that with the TIF grant support, we will continue our ongoing efforts to create and sustain an effectiveness-based human capital management system. In addition, our system of support for adults will strengthen our strategies to improve supports for all classroom teachers and principals through rigorous professional training. We will also complete a training manual and process for administrators regarding teacher evaluation. With the support of this grant, teachers, principals, and assistant principals in eligible schools are compensated with stipends and pay increases. This competitive grant is managed by Laura Kane, Assistant to the Superintendent for Strategic Initiatives, and addresses advancement intended and outlined in Goal 1 to achieve and maintain academic excellence. And questions can be answered by Laura Kane.
Okay, very good. We have a motion, second?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, thanks, Glenna, thanks, Becky. Any questions? Just two questions. This brings our total for the 5 years to what, Laura?
This was a $42 million grant when it was first given to us back 5 years ago,
Okay.
or approximately.
And I know we've done some other things, we've been involved with Learning Forward and developing learning systems, professional learning, what used to be called professional development, but what percentage so far has gone, into the pockets of our actual staff in the form of bonuses?
Yeah, I don't have a percentage for you, but I can tell you that currently over $14 million has gone straight to principals or teachers in the form of a stipend or an addition to their salary.
And is that 14 million?
And that's actually with a payout that only exists now for the past 3 years. We have yet to make a payout
Okay.
for last year's data as it hasn't come in yet.
So that's 14 million so far, and the
Yeah.
next payout will,
Be whenever.
if we're lucky,
Yeah.
December of this year, because it is dependent on getting test scores and
Right.
information back from the state, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Which,
we'll-
was really expedited this year because, we were going to get it in July this year.
Certainly, it has not been expedited as hoped for. But we do hope or anticipate that scores will be here and that the Department of Ed will have growth models in place and that we'll be able to do those stipends in accordance with last year's ratings and do that final
Right.
piece. But, so really, it's only been approximately 3.5 years of payouts.
Right.
We're really working now on paying out for year 4.
Right.
We're always running behind.
Okay.
But to date, over $14 million has gone directly to teachers or principals.
Great,
Am
thank
I
you.
right that you can't reapply for this?
In this particular round, we weren't able to. The a restriction was that, and always has been in terms of a TIF grant, is that schools could not be touched by a TIF grant at the same time continuously. And
Okay.
there are some districts that are so large, like say a Dallas or a Los Angeles school district, that they only use their TIF funds for certain schools. And so then they could keep reapplying, because then they're going to grow what they've been doing, that maybe they piloted. In our case, we did our best to touch every school in the district. There's only a small group of buildings that we're not able to touch with this grant in terms of they didn't qualify, such as our alternative programs, those kind of things. So we weren't able to apply for this round. Hopefully, there'll be other opportunities in the future.
Okay, all right, well, that's good news. That's a good answer.
If I could say out loud, I want to thank Laura and Charles Kamick and the people in HR and the Teachers Association. I thought I saw Julie, because it's been an effort to try to use the funds for what we intended for them to be used for when there are delays. So the TIF grant people are understanding of our political environment, and the timing issue is always the issue because they won't let us use it without the data. But they have been understanding of the delay. So I just wanted to say that out loud. There's a lot of effort, in conjunction with FWA to try to spend the money in the way we ask for it. So I want to thank them publicly for that hard work.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all those voting for approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And now we have now we get into a series of items for our budget. You may recall that 2 weeks ago at the October 10th meeting, we had a public hearing on the budget, right? And I don't believe anyone chose to speak, although, Brian, you may have had, I think you had a comment, but anyways, so we did have an opportunity for the public to speak about the budget, and that was 2 weeks ago. So now we get into a series of votes. And Glenna, I believe you're going to take the 2016 budget reduction.
Yes, so it is recommended that the board adopt the resolution reducing the 2016 Racial Balance Fund and Transportation Fund budget appropriation as indicated. And the related information given is that the Department of Local Government Finance needs this resolution to perform the technical adjustment necessary to permit the full 2017 Racial Balance Fund and Transportation Fund budget to be realized. And then questions will be answered and addressed by Chief Financial Officer Kathy Friend, if there are any. And we can entertain a motion if there are no questions.
Okay, and if you look at the back of the sheet, you'll notice that the Racial Balance Fund is being reduced by about a little over $900,000, and the transportation budget being reduced by a little over $3 million, right? Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, Steve. So Kathy, you just want to give us just, the shorthand version of why we have to do this?
Yeah. So when we have you approve the budget each year for these funds that have circuit breaker impacts, we actually budget as if we're going to collect all the money and spend all of the money that we would normally be allowed to raise. But because we know a portion of it won't be available, we set it aside in an appropriation specifically called, we call it circuit breaker or unallocated equipment or something like that. So, but that allows us to raise the full amount we're allowed to raise initially. So we leave that appropriation sit there until this time, and then we reduce it because we can't spend that appropriation. There's not enough money available to do it. That frees up the balance to be used towards the 2017 budget. If we left this in place, the Department of Local Government Finance would assume we're going to spend it all. And that would impact our ability to get next year's budget approved. Because if we didn't, for instance, if we didn't cut that $3 million set aside in the transportation fund, then they would say that you're going to spend that full $3 million, your cash balance is going to be in
Right.
a negative position. And so this is, like it says, it's a technical adjustment that needs to be made. Doesn't give us any more or less money. It just makes next year's budget go smoothly for us for 2017. And next year I'll be back with this exact same
Yeah, every year.
adjustment, unfortunately, yeah.
Right. Okay, any questions? Other questions? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay. And now we have the 2017 budget adoption and resolutions. It's recommended that the board approve the proposed Fort Wayne Community School 2017 appropriations or budgets, the 2017 levies, the three-year capital projects fund plan for 2017 through 2019, and the bus replacement plan for the years 2017 to 2028. A public budget presentation was made at the September 26th Board of School Trustees meeting. All 9 board-adopted funds and proposed budgets were discussed, and estimated tax rates were reviewed. The capital projects plan and the bus replacement plan were properly advertised on September 27th in both newspapers. The budget was submitted to the Indiana Gateway on September 26th, and that's any member of the public can access the Indiana Gateway, right? Which I haven't done yet. So it's in the Indiana Gateway for public information. A hearing to allow the public to make comments on the advertised budgets, the 3-year capital projects plan, and the 12-year bus replacement plan was held 2 weeks ago on October 10th. All legal requirements for advertisement and hearings have been met for all 9 funds, the capital projects plan and the bus replacement plan. So we've got a, copy of the, of all of those here in our information. And questions, again, can be answered by Kathy. So do we have a motion and second for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Glenna. Any questions?
Do we have somebody who indicated an interest in speaking on this?
Not I.
Sarah?
I mean, anyone who could have spoken 2 weeks ago at the public hearing, so.
I thought there was someone who indicated an interest in speaking before we voted, which we normally allow.
No one signed up.
I mean, we've done that in
Well, we
the
will have
past. I know
public-
it's not the time in the agenda to do that, but I think we've allowed that, and Mr. Sweet might be able to help us on that question.
The board has at times allowed that, Mr. Corona, but as Ms. Hollingsworth noted, the public hearing was 2 weeks ago.
Okay?
You can always, if someone requests to speak, you can always make a decision whether to permit or not permit it. But the letter of the law would say that the public hearing is passed.
Okay. All right.
Do
Thank
you
you.
want to make a motion, or?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, okay. And there's always, we do have public comment at the close of the meeting for anyone who wants to address the board. So do we have a motion and second for approval? Oh, we did that, didn't we? Steve and Glenna. Gotcha. Woof. Okay. No other questions? I think we hashed it all out over the last couple meetings. So all those voting for approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Budget approved. Next, we have the closing of capital projects in the capital projects fund. Steve?
Sure. The recommendation before us is that we approve a resolution to close certain capital projects fund projects. The background on that is that CPF project appropriations expire either when they are spent or when the board takes action to close the project, which is being recommended this evening. A project needs to be closed when the purpose for the appropriation has been achieved. Unspent appropriations and projects that are completed and closed revert to the fund balance, where they then become available to be reappropriated and spent on other projects. And we have a list of the 3 items that we were being asked to move on. They total roughly $2.6 million. There's, from 2014, $8,117. It looks like for building acquisition, construction, and the improvements of, looks like roofing projects. The same thing in 2015. That amount's larger, $2.3 million, $2,330,356.15. And then finally, another roofing appropriation that has a fund balance of $306,210. So that total again is $2,644,683.15. And there is a resolution also attached to the recommendation.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Becky. Thanks, Ann. So, and again, the almost 2.3 million of it is circuit breaker, right, Kathy?
That's right. And
So you want to give us another brief?
Well, I was just going
update?
to say, capital projects is handled a little bit differently than the other two funds. You'll notice that that's a 2015 appropriation we're closing, where the other ones were 2016 appropriations. So this has to be handled a little bit differently. So, yeah, 2.2 million of it is the 2015 circuit breaker. The 2016 will be carried over until next year, and then it'll be reduced, so,
Okay. Another technicality.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of approving the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Okay, next we have levy neutrality. Take it away, Ann.
It is recommended that the board approve reductions to the 2017 budgets of the Transportation Fund and the Capital Projects Fund plan to support the tax neutrality requirements of the pension bond. In related information, Public Law 199 requires that those districts who issue a pension bond to replace their retirement severance programs must make the annual bond payment a tax-neutral event to taxpayers. As a result, Fort Wayne Community Schools has chosen to reduce the levies in the Transportation Fund and the Capital Projects Fund plan. And any questions will be answered by Kathy Friend.
And it's a about $3.2 million reduction, right? And $2 million of that is capital projects, and $1.2 million is from the Transportation Fund. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Ann. Any questions? Kathy, any comments for the education of our public?
Yeah, this is another unusual requirement. This will end in 2021, will be the last time we'll have to do this, but because that's when our debt service payments will end. But in the meantime, the budget you approved is artificially stated higher than what we'll be allowed to have because the Department of Local Government Finance will cut it by these two amounts when we get to our hearing. So, and that's what our expectation is.
Okay, great. Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, opposed? Okay. And now, Jordan, goals for expenditures categories. Oh, and I have to read all of that.
Yeah, it's recommended the board approve a resolution to set expenditure category goals for the 2016-2017 school year. The goal is to improve upon the current percentages being expenditures are allocated for student instructional categories versus other expenditure categories. Beginning with the 2007-2008 school year, school districts are required to establish goals for each category of expenditures that will increase the school corporation's allocation of taxpayer resources directly to student instruction and learning in light of the unique circumstances present in the school corporation. Here's what I can tell you in a nutshell, folks. We've got expenditures that focus on student instruction and student learning. And then we have other expenditures that focus on operational and non-operational costs. For instance, student instruction expenditures, academic achievement, and instructional support. Fort Wayne Community Schools in 2013 and 2014 spent more of our percentage of allocated taxpayer money in those areas than did the average districts in the state. Similarly, with respect to operational and non-instructional expenditures, such as overhead, operational, non-operational expenditures, we spent less of the money that we had as a percentage than did the average districts in the state. And the same thing's going to hold true for the 2014 and 2015 budget. In fact, when you look at Fort Wayne Community Schools as a whole, we are spending approximately 4.6% of the monies that we have allocated to our instructional needs versus other average state districts. Any
Thanks,
questions?
Jordan.
Kathy can answer. Did I do okay, Kathy?
You did great. Yep.
We spend more on instruction in our kids than we do on operations. Better than the average districts in the state.
Yep.
Good job. Do we have a motion and a second?
Moved.
Becky, Ann, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I believe that brings us to the end of our new business. And we have no reports for tonight. Next meeting is Monday, the 14th of November. We'll have a World Series champion by then. So Steve, you want to start out with the comments?
Sure. I'm proudly wearing a T-shirt from Bunch Preschool, and had a chance to be principal for a day last week and shared that honor with Sal Soto, who's a realtor with Northeastern Realty. And the promise I got from Sal was to please come back with his colleagues to visit the school. It's a wonderful
Great.
Building. Tammy Mullins is the principal. This is her second deployment there. We had sent her to Tolles, and she's back. Our first duty of the day, if you'll recall, it was raining on Thursday. And so we got out the umbrellas. I had a nice raincoat, good sturdy shoes, and we unloaded kids from the cars. And that's the way we ended our day, in the rain and putting, hopefully, the right kids back in the right vehicle. I think everybody ended up in the right vehicle. But it was stress to me. And it was interesting because these are 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, and I have several grandkids that age. But what was so wonderful was to see these young folks in rooms, and I was clearly told that they were not playing but learning, and that everything they did had a learning application to it. And so there were people, young people all over the room, pouring, I don't know, looked like tea or something, and using real glasses and bottles. And, as a grandparent, I kind of, whoa, but I was told, this is the way it is out in the real world. Some of them, they used cloth napkins because after they used them, they washed them and ironed them. There was an iron in the room. It was an interesting process in that what really opened my eyes was the other adults in the room besides the teacher. There were a number of support folks helping the teacher understand children with issues, and really not problems, but just trying to figure out if this is where those young people needed to be. And it was really an eye-opener to see the amount of support the teachers get in that classroom as they try to sort out how everybody behaves and ticks and moves. And it was really a tremendous experience. So I promised Tammy that I would put on the Bunch Tigers T-shirt and probably share it with you, but enjoyed my day there.
Thanks, Steve. Glenna?
My two oldest grandchildren went to Bunch, and it was just delightful to visit there. It's a beautiful building, and the Montessori method is incredible.
If I might add, if you don't mind, it was, it's in the central, Bunch Elementary is in the central city, located to an apartment complex that has had its share of issues. And yet Tammy said, we have not had problems from the neighborhood come onto our property. And I think that says a lot about the respect our schools have, even in the most challenging parts of Fort Wayne. I'm sorry.
No,
Great.
that's okay, no. I was lucky to be invited to Studi Elementary with Tim Bobay as principal, and I just, like you, I just tagged along with whatever they're doing, and they had a special field trip that they needed 2 buses for, and at one point they only had 1 bus, so they're going to put 3 kids at a seat, and then luckily the other bus came up, and it all worked out, but you can tell they have their little, what do they call them? Speakers, their little,
Radios?
radios,
Oh.
talking to each other, where the bus is it coming, are we going to be late, just watching Mr. Bobay do his work there. He also, it really touched my heart in that the school and the staff was reaching out to a family of 3 children, and the 3 children were in a traumatic situation, and they were able to help in that situation with the home, and I'm not going to go into more detail on that, but everybody was focused on those children, and they didn't all belong to that school. One was an older child, and it was just all focused on their safety and them being comfortable, and what can this organization do to help those children. And, to me, that's what we're all about. So I was really thrilled with how everybody responded to that. I got to see an earthquake drill. There was no earthquake, but I got to see the drill, and everybody was under the desks, and we get to walk through and tell whether they were doing it right or not. So one of the really coolest things is we were in all these different areas of Studi, and everywhere I went, I kept seeing 2 and 3 teachers together collaborating. And they were on different subjects in different places, but just talking about what they're going to do at the next week, or putting ideas together on how to present information to children. And so it's just very intense, all this learning that's going on among the teachers and coaches and staff all the way through. My favorite thing, though, was in the art class down in the basement, this precious, I think it was 3rd grader, or 4th grader maybe, brought me down, and I was watching what he was doing, and he looked at me, and he looked at Mr. Bobay, and he says, are you Mr. Bobay's grandma? I said, no, but I'd love to be. And I want to congratulate Melanie and Kristen and all that huge team that had to do with that marvelous luncheon. It was moved from Anthony's basement over to the Face building, and people, if you haven't been there, go there and see what a gorgeous community asset we have. It was a wonderful, wonderful, delicious luncheon, and everybody had space to move and go around and talk to each other. So it was a delightful day. It's always my favorite day.
Ann?
And my kids went to Bunch and Tolles, and we loved it, and I still miss it every day. It is a great, great school to go to. And I
You
went
miss having kids that young?
Well, no. They're pretty independent now, so that's kind of nice. But it is nice to see those little kids again. I went to Glenwood Park, and I kind of got the opposite that you did, Becky. And I also kind of set the kids up, but I went into one classroom, and they were talking to me. They were all so very nice. I mean, they would shake my hand, and they would talk to me. But one little boy asked, how old are you? And so I set him up, and I said, well, how old do I look? He goes, 17. I love you.
Wow, yeah. Pretty old.
So yes, that was kind of a booster over there at Glenwood Park. I think I'll go back there every day. But I did, the kids were just so focused. They were so polite and so into their work. And one of the things I noticed, of course, happens at most of our schools is the use of technology. And one of the things that one of the teachers was piloting was think it was called Classroom Modo or something like that, but it's almost like a Facebook app for a classroom, but you only are using that, the parents of that classroom and then the teacher, they communicate through this app, similar to Facebook. You can private message them, you can post things that are going on in the classroom, pictures and videos, and I just thought that was great because I asked, well, so theoretically, you could tape your lesson and put that on your app so that the parents could see that lesson when the kid comes home and doesn't quite understand or forget or whatever. The parents could watch that lesson being presented, which I would love that now, even at high school. My husband would love to watch all those math teachers doing everything. So I thought that was a really neat use. And the classroom teacher that was piloting it said there were only 2 parents who did not have the technology for it, so that was great. And she seemed to love it, and the kids liked it. They're going to download it, I think, on their iPad so that the kids can actually look at those, pictures of themselves and the lessons and things like that. So it was a great day.
Okay, thanks, Ann.
Well, my house, it's filling out college application time. The early deadline is November 1st. And my eldest is pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to get it done, trying to do this and trying to do that. So Dad wants to help, and Dad says, Sebastian, I've looked at this brochure, and I think what the college wants you to write about, what they're looking for is this. Wait a minute, Dad. I'm not going to do it that way. If the college doesn't want me, it's not my fault that I'm not the right fit for them. It's just not the right fit of college for me. And I love that little spark of independence, because it tells me that what we're doing with our kids is we in Fort Wayne Community Schools are just not teaching to the test. We're giving them the desire to learn and go forward. And I see that not just with my son, but I see it with his friends. They're a very close-knit group, very small clique, but they're incredibly diverse, and they're going off in different angles and different directions based upon their own personal desires. And if the only thing we were doing was teaching to the test, I wouldn't see that in my backyard. And for that, I applaud the administrators, I applaud the teachers. You're doing a great job.
Thanks, Jordan. Dr. Robinson, did you have anything?
We were talking a little earlier about assessments. We have been given some preliminary information that potentially letter grades are coming out sometime end of October, which is next week, or November. We don't really know, so we'll try to keep the board informed. The date for the I-STEP scores has been pushed back again, so we're not quite sure when that's going to happen either. But I would like to comment on the environment around the assessment committee and want to reassure our community, but also to have the board, we need to kind of talk some more about the fact that the test is one thing, the accountability system is another. And we can't get so enamored with how many fewer hours we're going to test or how much money we're going to save if we have a new test in the old accountability system and we're still slapping letter grades based on one test. So there are 2 more meetings of that assessment committee. There are several other committees. The state school superintendent has an advisory group that's trying to look at some of the impact of ESSA. I just want to remind the community, we are on top of that. We are involved in as many different parts of that conversation as we can, but I think sooner rather than later, as we're getting a little more information, we need to have a public conversation at a board meeting about how all those pieces fit, because everybody wants the test to be shorter. But we haven't, as a state, decided, why are we testing? And what ultimately will be the measure of success. We've talked all evening about the things that you see happening in our schools. None of that's measured on a test. And so we're still working at it, plugging away every single day, but nothing new. And unfortunately, we may be into the new year before we even get the results back from last year, but we're still teaching.
Exactly. And I spent principal for a day at Lincoln Elementary with Frank Klein and the Lincoln Lions. The rain, I remember, reminded me that it would be nice if we could get a canopy for every main entrance to the building, and Lincoln doesn't have one, and so Darren, I'll sign that to you. I'm also on the, it was Twin Day when I was there. Lincoln was having Unity Week. So Mr. Klein and I guess, were twins because we were both wearing the Lincoln Lions t-shirt and khaki pants, so that made us twins. There was a teacher and a student who were twins. They're right down to the boots they were wearing. Kids wearing the same shoes, all sorts of things. The sweetest thing I saw was there was a little girl who wore a hijab, who, if I pronounce that correctly, so she could be a twin with her Muslim friend. I thought that was really cute. But it's always exciting to go into our schools, especially elementary schools. And speaking of technology, I went in the art classroom, and the art teacher there uses something called Artopia, or I don't even know if I have it right, Artsonia, that's what it is, Artsonia maybe? And it allows students they can upload their artwork to this app or to this website, and then if they have relatives elsewhere in the country, then their relatives elsewhere can access it. Wow. And not only that, of course, there's this angle, but if they want to have a t-shirt made with their grandson or granddaughter's, artwork on the t-shirt, they can order that. But it was a pretty cool thing that I hadn't seen before. I'm also on the FACE Advisory Board, and we met this week, and there was a person on the advisory board, I think, if I had this correct, who had a relative, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but, Chad. But they were talking about how their family had also suffered a traumatic event, and they needed to enroll students in different schools, and they went to FACE and just basically got all their needs taken care of. They could enroll them all. Do you need a backpack? They got backpack for the kids. Shoes, we have a clothing bank and things like that. And they just were so impressed by the customer service that they got at the FACE building. And so I'm sure that, I'm sure you shared that with your staff, Chad, but that was a great story to hear. But the talk tonight about the money that this district and every district spends on instruction, setting a goal, and then we also had to report that, reminded me, some of you may have seen in the, I think it was in the Journal-Gazette, that Representative Jim Lucas wrote an article about several things. The first thing he did was point out that I think 52% of the state's budget is spent on K-12 education, or maybe just education. And I always shake my head when I see that, because back in 2008, that legislature changed how the general fund worked. Most of our general fund money used to come from local property taxes, right, Kathy?
A part of it did, yeah.
Part of it did, but some of it did. Yeah. But now they changed that so that it comes from the state. And to do that, to make that change, they increased the state sales tax by a percentage point. So don't complain or be surprised that so much of the budget goes to education when that's how you designed it. He also made a lot of comparisons from, I think it was from 1992 to 2006, that the student population, and these are national figures, that the student population only increased 9%, but maybe adult staffing in schools increased by, I don't even remember the number, but let's say it's 50%. And I thought to myself, okay, now I was teaching in 1992. I think, and it may have been 1992 when I had my first student ever who did not speak English. And think how that has changed in the public schools. We have, you know, a much, obviously, larger population of English language learners or limited English proficiency, I believe that we're calling it. We have staffing. We have staffing that's required by grants that we get from the state and the federal government to meet the needs of those students. So that has changed. How big do you think our IT department was in 1992? Yeah, one person, maybe two. Obviously, technology is so much more prevalent in not only our lives, but our students' lives and in the classroom. And, you know, we have a much larger IT department. Special education has expanded. Think of the, you know, just the number of, the increase in students maybe that have autism that just wasn't as prevalent in 1992. So that span from 1992 to 2006, it just, you know, to me, it, when you're comparing school staffing issues, it's not a fair comparison. That's a light year almost from 1992 to 2006. So I wanted to mention that. So that's all I have. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Becky. All those in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. Thank you. No one's opposed, I assume. Okay. Well, the microphone is open for anyone who would like to address